right, I got a cross versus battle for you guys today, and it is a 12v12. All right, it's two big ass groups versus each other essentially. The worst generation from One Piece versus the Konoha 12. Both are at like their full power. Right? Okay. No Boruto though for Naruto, just Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. Because we don't do that over here, right? But this is still close, by the way, even if you don't include that. But I'll tell you who's in each group, and then I'll explain how I see the matchups going, and then I'll run down, who wins each category, and then who the winner is at the end of it. So for the worst generation, we have Luffy, Blackbeard, Zoro, Law, Kid, Killer, Hawkins, Apu, Drake, Uruj, Beje, and Bonnie. Those are the worst generation members. The 12 that are the worst generation members, right? And then the Konoha 12 are Naruto, Sasuke, Lee, Neji, Hinata, Sakura, Shikamaru, Choji, Shino, Ino, Tenten, and Kiba. And that's the Konoha 12. Now, there's actually two scenarios for this, right? Since it's a cross versus battle, I had to make it like both ways, right? If they're fighting in the One Piece world, they're just gonna fight in Dressrosa, I guess. All right. And then in the Naruto verse, they'll fight. They'll fight inside of Konoha, where they usually fight for the tuning exams, like just all of them at once. All right. It's gonna be a big battle royale kind of style shit, right? Now, who's gonna be fighting who in this though? You know, this is the way I see it going. For most of them, right? Like even if it's in like it doesn't really matter which world they're in, but this is how I see it going more times than not. So Luffy and Naruto are gonna fight each other, right? Luffy has Gear 5, Naruto has Sage 6 Paths, the 6 Paths chakra, right? And then Blackbeard's gonna fight against Sasuke. And why is it Blackbeard instead of Zoro? Because Blackbeard's closer to Luffy than Zoro is to Luffy in power. So it makes sense. And now this is where things get interesting a little bit. We got Zoro versus Rock Lee. All right. Interesting in that, you'll see, what I mean as I keep going through this list. Law would fight Neji. Kid would fight against Choji. I have him fighting against Choji. Killer, I have him fighting against Tenten. I got Hawkins fighting against Hinata. I got Apu fighting against Shino. Drake fighting against Kiba. Uruj fighting against Sakura. Beji fighting against Shikamaru. And Bonnie fighting against Ino. Now, we got scenario one that's in the One Piece world, Dressrosa Cordia Coliseum area, and they're all just fighting there, right? Strength of the worst generation, they're strong. Like these characters ain't weak. In the like general sense, like we're looking at the whole group, not just one person in the group. These guys are strong. In the other group, they have some fucking weaklings, and they do. These pirates have to survive. They have to keep Marines off their dick at all times. It ain't an easy, gig. You feel me? Yeah, Naruto, they get time to rest and other stuff, and they do, boy. Um, yeah, that whole group over there is, and it's like Sasuke and Naruto are actually carrying that side heavily. But anyways, we got Speed going to the Konoha 12. I'll give it to them though in the speed department, because like the weaker members of the worst generation aren't as fast as the weaker members of um, Naruto. So I'll give them speed there. And that's because of the weaker members of the worst generation holding him back. So Konoha 12 gets the speed. But durability wise, I'll give it to the fucking, worst generation. These people can take hits. Weaker members of Konoha 12 just don't got it like that. And same for endurance. These pirates, like again, I say they fight to survive. Not saying that the ninjas don't, but it ain't the same thing. You know, the weaker members are really holding that shit back. Um, Intelligence goes to the Konoha 12 though. They're like ninjas, so they like always work together and shit. They ain't a part of different crews or anything like that. So they're smart. Their group is, smart, and they're able to communicate amongst each other, and they will be able to do that. So I give them the credit there, right, for intellect. And then experience, I'll give it to the worst generation. These pirates, some of them have been pirates for a long time. In the worst generation, they just didn't get credited with shit until they, reached a certain level, right? And then the Konoha 12, they're all young. They're all like, because we're using their forms from Naruto, right? Boy, we don't use Boruto over here. They're all like 16, 17 years old, so they ain't doing all that. In that department. But close skills, I give it to the Konoha 12, like, for the most part. They got hands. Weaker members of the supernovas don't got it like that. But range skills, I give that shit to the, worst generation. They'll get the range skills for that. A lot of them use range skills. They got devil fruits. Some of them have devil fruit awakenings. They can affect the environment as a whole. So that's, a thing. Recoup, I'm giving it to the Konoha 12. They have medical ninja on that side. So they'll be all right there. Hacks, I'm giving it to the worst generation. The worst generation has Blackbeard and Luffy on it. And they're both maxed out with both their devil fruits, hockey. And then you have Zoro and Kid with their hockey, all they're doing shit, and that's the top people over there. Naruto and Sasuke are the only ones holding it down over there. You got Rock Lee with 6 gates, 6 of the 8 gates, but that's not enough. It ain't enough to, fuck Zoro up. Hell, it ain't even enough to beat Kid, to be honest. Because that guy ain't as weak as people think he is. He can take some damage and shit, right? Yeah, man. Nope. As a whole, the worst generation got it. But then when it comes to environment, we're giving it to the Konoha 12, even though it's in the One Piece world, because they are on an island, and some of these fights, because like they could like kick each other way the fuck out. Their attacks could just be like, boom, I'm gonna kick him away from everybody else, and now they're like on the shore of the island, and he's fighting against the Dofu user. So the Konoha 12 got the advantage in the environment. But even with all that, as a whole, the worst generation is going to win. High to extreme diff. And then in the second scenario, it's in the Naruto world. So worst generation got the strength, physical strength. Speed goes to the Konoha 12. Durability goes to the worst generation. Endurance goes to the worst generation. Intellect goes to the Konoha 12. Experience goes to the worst generation. Close skills go to the Konoha 12. Worst generation has the range skills. Recoup goes to the Konoha 12. Hacks go to the worst generation, and then the environment goes to the worst generation because there's no oceans there. These animals have free reign. And most of them are all devil fruit users. There's only two non-devil fruit users on that side. Um, when it comes to the worst generation, and it's Zoro and Killer. Well, actually, just Zoro because Killer ate the smile fruit. So now it's just Zoro. But they wouldn't have to worry about it there because there ain't no water there. These niggas on the fucking Naruto side, no, like not one of these animals, not one of them. Like you can't say they use water jutsu. So da. None of them use water jutsu. Not one of the Konoha 12 used water style. And even if they did, it wouldn't be enough. It would just get them wet, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, I'm wet." It ain't like what you think. So that being said, the worst generation wins high extreme diff over there too. Um, we'll say extreme diff on the other side of things, but in this second scenario, they're actually winning high extreme diff, and it's crazy too, right? Because it's in the Naruto world. But since they have no oceans to worry about, the Delph users can, man, they'll fuck shit up. Because like that's the thing, the weaker members of the Konoha 12, right? They're gonna get dismissed by the weaker members of the worst generation. Once that happens, they're already helping out like Luffy and Blackbeard fight against Naruto and Sasuke. You know, Zoro's beating Lee or Neji, whoever the fuck he has to fight that's like not Naruto or Sasuke, and he's beating them. So then he's going over to help Blackbeard out with Sasuke or Naruto out with, Luffy. In that case, once like Naruto and Sasuke are gone, their whole team fucked. They're fucked. Um, and then they have a doctor called, Trafalgar Law. So it ain't like, they don't have means to recover or anything like that, right? But Konoha has more, and like, I think Ino knows a little bit of healing jutsu, but Sakura does for sure, you know. Um, but yeah, man, it was a close fight, and it would be interesting to see that. But I got it high to extreme diff in both worlds, actually. I ain't gonna take that back. Worst generation has that shit. Um, but let me know what you think about that in the comments, and be cool on the corner, y'all.